Welcome to the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting. This is our first meeting for fiscal year '23. Today is July 28th, 2022. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, meetings conducted by hybrid means will be conducted in person and via remote access in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body may access these meetings in person or via remote means using the link that was posted on the town website. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by accessing the meeting in person. Additional meetings are broadcast in real time via Westborough TV, Verizon Channel 28, or Charter Channel 192, or on youtube.com/Westborough TV. So this evening, we were going to make a presentation, a thank you presentation and farewell presentation to Hank Rauch, but I was advised that he is out of town. And so in its place, John Arnold, will you introduce our newest member?
Sure. I also wanted to just point out that while we were waiting, Andrew has joined. I think he's on mute. Oh, wow, an infinite scroll of me. That's great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so anyway, so I wanted to introduce to you Rod Schaffert, who is the new appointee. He's been appointed to fill the year remaining on Hank Rauch's term, who you just mentioned. Hank, as those of us in the know here in the Finance Committee, wanted to step aside and finally retire a year before his term was done. And so I also want to thank Hank for his years of service. I remember serving with him on the committee and then reappointing him a number of times since I was moderator. But mostly tonight, I want to welcome Rod Schaffert to the committee. And Rod, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and give a little bit about your background. So thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you, John. It's with great pleasure. I joined the Advisory Finance Committee. I have a strong background in both engineering and construction. I live at 8 Parkman Street. I've lived there for the past 17 years, and obviously interested in what's happening downtown as well as the community in large. So look forward to learning more about how the town operates and helping out where I can.
Okay. Thank you, Rod. On behalf of the committee, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you. And
tonight you'll be getting your first liaison assignments. So, first order of business is a approval of the minutes of June 30th, 2022. May I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, is there any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, we'll vote. We have to go alphabetically, and I think we'll start tonight with Andrew Bradley since Beth Blumberg and Melanie Board are not with us this evening. So Andrew, are you here? I know you're here. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Bradley, yes.
So the next one up is Walter.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Abstain.
Moretti, yes. So we have 501. Yep. Okay, those minutes are approved. Okay, so the second order of business is to have a follow-up discussion about the tax classification presentation to the select board. I'm sure, I know some of us were there in person, and I know, Rod, you took a look at it.
I did my homework assignment. I got up
Homework
to the
assignment.
residential exemption, so anything up to there, I'm okay. But after
Okay.
that,
Yeah, I think that was the big one. So, any comments or opinions, observations along those lines? Anything that you want to, anybody wants to comment on?
I'll
please.
jump in the pond.
Yeah.
I thought the presentation was very informative and a little more detailed than we've seen before. and certainly very educational on the mechanics of the tax options. I found that sitting there, you're thinking about how it's not just a simple system because one thing can cause another, unintended consequences and things like that. At the same time, I don't know how we get less anecdotal and more, whether people have written more about this or done more about this. 20 years ago, I lived in Marlborough. There was a split tax rate. There still is. Companies are still moving to Marlborough and stuff. So I don't. I think it's a very interesting topic. I'm just wondering how much you can get that's more data driven. And I think John did a good job pointing out it's hard because, for instance, the example that's sometimes cited is Milford went that way and then their business properties dropped in value, so they're trying to back out of it. Well, their business properties may have dropped in value anyway. I mean, you don't know what is caused and what is it was going to happen because of a myriad of other reasons. So I kind of don't think it should be just a band-aided approach, but I do think it's well worth looking at. And I don't go along with the theory that businesses don't use schools, because in Massachusetts we've decided to fund schooling through property tax to a large extent, except for the stuff that comes from the state. So anybody that pays property tax has to support the public schools, and that's that. So I don't buy the is it fair kind of argument. I don't know what fair is, but I don't think it's unfair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Gene?
So one of the things that I walked away thinking I'd like to learn a little bit more about is what percentage of the land by, acre, whatever, is classified as residential versus business, and then what percentage of the valuation. I suspect that the business valuation per acre is probably a little higher anyway. I think that's one of the data points I'd be curious to know, in terms of equity. Because really what we're talking about is shifting some of the tax burden off of the residential and onto the business, but it may already be happening due to the valuation.
Right.
So I'd be curious to know what that looks like.
Okay. That's good. Anybody else? Zafra, comment?
It's still for discussion, yes. It's still,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Rod?
So, again, like everybody else, I can see a little bit of both sides of the issue. Coming from the Economic Development Committee, they would argue strongly that we should have the single tax rate, and that helps promote businesses coming to Westborough. As a taxpayer, when I see my tax rate go up 10%, and theoretically the business tax rate go down, I can argue that that's not fair either. So I think as the proportion of the residential values take a greater percentage, it by itself causes the the commercial properties to go down. So I think it's not so, to me, it's not so much about the rate as what are the taxes for a company in Westborough versus the taxes for that company somewhere else, and may or may not have to do with a single tax rate or a dual tax rate.
Yeah, I saw nowhere the traditional, we use those dashboard towns or whatever they're called. We haven't seen that for this issue in any document I've seen. 14 towns that we compare everything to.
Right.
You know, industrial tax rate, home tax rate,
Right.
and things like that. It'd be interesting to see, certainly.
I found the information helpful, especially when John got into some of the details, and particularly the conversation on residential exemption. I can understand why so few towns have adopted that exemption. The thing that I would like to do is to understand the long-term implications of continuing with a single rate versus a dual rate. And I think that part of that is going to be some of the things that you folks talked about, not the least of which is how much of a role does location play in the choice of a business in selecting Westborough, given the fact that we sit on the confluence of 3 major traffic arteries. And I don't have the answer to that. I kind of suspect a couple of things, but I'm going to wait and see how that unfolds. Our former colleague, Paul Ugal, sent me some comments, which I know I shared with all of you. And he made a couple of points that I thought are worth further consideration. You know, he talked about the location. He talked about, is it a total tax, absolute value, or a tax rate that is important when they're talking about adjustments or competitive locations? Isn't the time to consider raising the tax rate easier to swallow when the commercial bills are about to go down or not to grow at the expected pace? Now, we don't know what the impact of the so-called recession is going to have. We don't know what the impact of inflation is going to be. We can suspect what that's going to be, but I'm not sure that, I think that has to be considered, and I'm sure it is considered. But my opinion is that as a committee, first of all, we don't want to duplicate what the Board of Selectmen is doing. And so I think that rather than try to duplicate their efforts, and I know they're going to have a public meeting at some point. I know there's a meeting coming up in August, which is going to, I think they're going to invite members of the business community as well as the public. But I would rather build on that. And I think that our next steps should be to, work as closely as we can with the select board without crossing over the line of, because that's, you know, they're an elected body, we're an appointed body. And then I think that we should not be averse to looking at this issue of single versus dual. And it's not a question of settling it once and for all, but it's a question of looking at it and say, okay, what makes the most sense going forward? And I think we have to be forward-looking as opposed to, you know, backward-looking. Everybody looks back and says, you know, well, this is what happened when this town went to a dual rate, and that's what happened when this town kept a single rate. I think that's good to know. History is important to learn from, but at the same time, I think we need to be forward-looking, because Westborough has a spending problem, a big one. And I don't know how we're going to continue to support, I'm going to call it a bad habit right now, that bad habit, especially with what we know is in the pipeline. So that's my 2 cents. I think that one of the things we can do as a committee is I can develop or I can put together a proposed plan of action for this committee and pass it by you folks, and then at our next meeting we can decide whether we want to keep that plan as it is or modify it. Any objection to that?
Nope.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Any other
Yeah.
comments? Yeah, please, Walter.
So I'm kind of wondering where we can find, and because I'd like to hear both sides, and I know the EDC and the Carter 9 Chamber are going to come and say no, keep a single. They've already said that publicly. But I'm wondering, who is an advocate for the split dual tax rate? Like, who would know? I mean, how do you find more positives than the simple statement that it lowers the rate? And I don't know how we find that, but it would be good.
I think that'll be part of the plan.
Yeah,
I
it would be
mean-
good to hear some more in-depth discussion of that from some experience that it was a positive thing, or it was a better thing, or something. I
I mean, there is the option, I have to find out from the appropriate folks whether it is appropriate to invite officials from other towns who've wrestled with this issue and have also have the dual tax rate, to give us their opinion. Or if not, invite them to one of our meetings to visit with them. And again, our objective is not to change. Our objective is to determine, I think, in our own minds, and make a recommendation whether or not a single rate or a dual rate is most appropriate. And I know I hope the select board is going in that direction as well.
The only other comment I would make is that, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a housing crisis, and having higher residential tax rates is not helping that. So I think that as we try to create housing in Westborough, we need to think about that.
Yeah, no, agreed. There was also a comment made at the select board meeting about the impact of tax issues on renters. And yes, and there are vulnerable people in Westborough who are renting, and we know that landlords are likely to pass on any increase in taxes to them. But at the same time, there's a counter argument that those folks are also taking advantage of the benefits of Westborough, which includes the school system and any other benefits that, the citizens of this town receive. So, anyway, if there's nothing else to say about this, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the calendar for the next few months going through October. This calendar does take into account the two religious holidays, so we will not be meeting on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. So those dates are not on this calendar. But again, this calendar is subject to the warrant and other unknowns that come along. So right now, this is 2-day-old information. The warrant was at 12 proposed articles, and most likely it will grow. So, but are there any concerns about the way I've laid out this calendar?
No.
All right. We'll make adjustments if we have to as we go along. Okay. All right. So then the next order of business, we come to probably
Mike,
the
could
most...
I just interrupt for a moment?
Of course, John.
Yeah, since I don't see what you're looking at and I don't know what the articles are, I just wanted to let you know that having attended or listened to all the Town Seal Review Committee, the Town Seal Review Committee is working very hard and hoping to have its report and some articles to hear that report and to act on the report at the October town meeting. So
Okay.
I will continue to keep you in progress, to keep you informed, and I will also let them know that when they're ready to talk about what their articles are, to not only submit them to the warrant, but to schedule a meeting to come present to you what their plans are.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I'm taking my cues with respect to the articles, John, or to the warrant from Christie. We know we've got we've got at least the seal coming, but we know we've got the library that's going to
Okay,
be
yeah,
there.
I just wasn't sure what was on the list because I haven't been keeping up with that
Yeah.
much.
So,
okay, thanks.
I right now it's kind of a little early to be pressing, so I think I'll just keep in touch with Christie's office and make sure that, we have an idea of not just an idea of how many, but the substance of some of those articles that we're going to have to deal with.
That's great. Just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, so we move on to liaison assignments. The departure of Paul Hugel and Hank Rauch left us with some pretty good-sized holes to be filled, and I'm very pleased that we have two new members who have, frankly, stellar backgrounds, which I think the town is going to appreciate having on this committee. So let's start with what we have to cover as a result of the departure of Paul and Hank. And let me begin with schools. As you know, Hank was one of the two liaisons to the school committee and the schools. And the more I got to think about it, the more I've talked about it with Beth and with Walter, the more I come to the opinion that given the impact of schools on this community, given the impact of the schools on the total budget of the town of Westborough, that I think there's enough gravitas there that the schools should be the default liaison assignment of the chair of this committee, whoever rotates in at the time they rotate in. Having talked with Walter about that, I know Walter has said that he would be happy to be the backup at this stage, so that if I assume that liaison assignment, if I could not make one of those school committee meetings, he would do that, whether he does it in person or via remote means. Secondly, I talked with Beth. Beth would like to remain as liaison to the schools. On the other hand, Beth has been on this committee for a long, long time. So I think it's appropriate from a succession planning perspective. And, I've agreed with Beth, if she wants to remain there as a school liaison, yes, absolutely. She's got the background, she's got the institutional history of it, so to speak, from the advisory committee's perspective. But Jean, given your background and the work you do with Boston College, I'm wondering if you wouldn't be willing to kind of serve in the bullpen and be ready?
Certainly.
And also back Beth up in the event she cannot make a meeting. And what this, I think, will do, and again, this is my opinion, so if you guys have a different perspective on this, please say so. I think this will always give us two sets of eyes and ears at the committee meetings, whether it's in person or remotely, so that we're not missing any information, particularly, obviously, information with respect to budgets. Being a liaison to the school committee basically means you've got to be at those, you've got to have some attendance at that meeting. And that's every other week once they start rolling along. And so I think that giving it the coverage it deserves because of the size of the budget and the impact in general on this community, I think that, that's what I'm proposing to do. Any concerns about that?
No, that's good.
I think that's good. I think both Hank and Beth did a good job in covering the schools, but often more just during the budget cycle sometimes, and they both were very busy too. So I think trying to get a more continuous attention being paid is probably a good idea.
Okay.
And so would the motion be to reappoint Beth and yourself with Jean as backup for Beth, or do we not need a motion for that part?
I don't think, let me defer to John. John, do we need to vote these liaison assignments? I don't think we've done that in the past.
I don't think so. I think it's always just been done by consensus. I mean, it's
Okay.
not,
Well, then that's
I
fine.
think it's
That's
been done by
easier.
consensus and just people agree to do it. So.
I like that better. It's less
Yeah,
in the minutes.
Consensus is always good, except with respect to appointments to committees, like the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, if it's a,
Right.
yeah, if it's
Okay,
a formal
that's what I was
appointment, that's an
confused.
ongoing one where it's, yeah, that would, yeah. If it's somebody serving a role like on a committee, or to be more than an informal liaison, then I would vote. So that would be good. But I think for just in terms of general agreement of who's going to try to monitor which department and sort of be the conduit for a single point of contact for questions, I think that can just be done by consensus.
So that would be just these ongoing committee ones?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, good. So do
Simple.
we have a consensus on the schools?
Yes.
Sounds like we
Just
do.
for clarification, you and Beth are the primary,
And
and Jean
you're
is
in the
gonna learn
bullpen.
about.
You're in the bullpen for me.
Oh, okay.
I
Sounds
didn't
good.
want to say understudy, as
I
in
know.
the theater, but.
Back up.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
All right.
the next big one on the table is the Department of Public Works and the wastewater treatment plant. And I'm going to suggest, given Rod's background as a civil engineer, and
You never told me you're a civil engineer, Joke. You'll have to tell me later.
I'll tell you that's not for public consumption. But I'm going to suggest that Rod be the liaison to the DPW. And that includes wastewater treatment plant, that includes snow and ice, and buildings.
And sewer enterprise?
And no, I've got
No,
to,
that's different.
that's something else in mind for
Okay,
that.
so DPW, snow and ice, buildings and grounds,
Yep.
and wastewater treatment and
Wastewater.
wastewater enterprise.
No, not wastewater, it's just wastewater treatment.
Wastewater treatment. Okay, got it.
All right, the plant itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any objection to that?
Nope.
Okay, all right, consensus decision. Sewer enterprise and water enterprise, those are business entities from our perspective. And Jean, I'm wondering if you would be willing, given your background with, your financial background, with whether or not you'd be willing to take those on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you gotta dive, I would hate to say you have to dive in that pool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it would be, ooh, yeah, I know. So, any concerns, can we go with that with Jean? Was there a
Yes.
consensus on that? Okay. Also, the Municipal Building Committee, I think we have to make a formal appointment on that one.
I mean,
Just include
oh,
that.
yeah. Is that still meeting? I guess it is.
Yeah. So did we just plug that?
But that's not a, is that an was Hank actually
I don't
a
think the
member
committee
of
has
that
a
committee?
formal slot
Yes,
on
he
the
was.
municipal building committee. So
No,
isn't
Hank
that
was,
just
according
normal
to
liaison?
our historical documents, Municipal Building Committee was Hank Rouch.
But I don't know if he is actually
Yeah,
on the
yeah, but
committee
I don't think
versus
he's,
a
I don't
liaison.
think that was a member serving on it. I believe the appointment to the building committee is now all done by the town manager. So you might want to check that. I
Okay.
think that one also can just be done by consensus, but you can
Okay.
confirm that if you want.
All right, thank you. I'll check it with Christie. Now, the next one, the next big
So did
hole,
you have somebody in mind for that,
for what?
for the municipal building committee? or-
So this is
Oh,
Andrew.
sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Andrew.
Oh, I did want to say that I currently serve on another committee that has 2/3 of the title of the municipal building committee, which is the school building committee. So if there's an interest in, I suspect that there's some crossover knowledge that I can share with that, and I'd be happy to keep my name in the ring as the need or opportunity arises.
For the Municipal Building Committee.
Yes.
Okay. Let me, first of all, let me speak with Christie about
The commitment.
the commitment, yeah, and whether or not she has to appoint that position. And then we'll take it up at our next meeting. I don't
For
think
the school
it's,
building committee, I appointed that.
No, he's talking about the municipal building.
Municipal-
Oh, you're talking about
building.
municipal, sorry. I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about Andrews thing, sorry.
Yeah.
looked away for real work for a second. Okay.
And
I'll be
yeah,
quiet.
maybe it's just a liaison and not an actual
Yeah, well,
appointment.
we'll
Yeah.
find out. Okay. Tom Dolan has requested the Conservation Commission. And unless anybody objects,
No,
nope, okay. So by consensus, Tom will have the Conservation Committee, or Commission, sorry. Did Tom Tom emailed you about the
yeah, he
zoning?
wanted to be on the planning board, I
And
have
the
said,
planning
I
board?
have no objection, yeah.
Okay. All right, Tom also requested the Planning Board, and along with that goes the Zoning Board of Appeals. Interested?
Along with that goes the zoning
Yeah.
board of appeals,
Are you-
okay,
You fine with that?
yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. So,
You could do one if you want.
No, I thought it's separate, so I.
They are
we could,
separate.
they are separate, but we would,
If you're,
given
if you're willing to do one
You're
of
willing
those,
to
that's
do
probably
one.
great.
ZBA?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
All right.
all
So
right.
Z is on the ZBA.
See, that's easy to remember. And Tom is the Planning Board.
So Tom is gonna do the planning board and the
Yeah.
zoning board of appeals, or?
No, you're going to do the Zoning Board of Appeals. You also have Economic Development. Are you staying with that?
Yeah, I can stay with that.
Okay. Because, they just, Rod was a member of that Economic Development. So you're welcome to stay with it if that's what you'd like to do.
I just wanted to contribute, the thing is, with the future job.
Yeah,
it's,
your
because
work.
of but the EDC meets during the daytime, so I thought once in a while I can
Okay,
go in that meeting, because that's the only committee which mostly meets in the daytime, 8 o'clock in the morning.
okay. All right.
But, if there's
No,
a better candidate, I'm like, I want to contribute some, whatever.
Yeah, That's good, that's fine. We'll keep it that way.
Okay.
Thank you. And yes, I am prepared to relinquish the police liaison, and Melanie Board has asked to take on the police liaison, so she would have the package of public safety, both fire and police. So does anybody have any concerns or object to that? Okay, so that will be a consensus. Okay, has anybody else given any thought to any of these other liaison assignments that they have currently or are open?
I haven't given thought to, I looked at some of the other open ones, and Sustainable Westborough would probably be a reasonable one to have a liaison for,
Okay,
and it's currently open,
okay.
and I don't know if anybody has interest in that, but I'm a little hesitant to step up to more.
Oh, no. Andrew, any interest in Sustainable Westborough?
So there's a certain temptation, given my position that that I took at the last town hall meeting about the electrical police car and how it seemed to come in the absence of a plan for Sustainable Westborough. So do we know what the commitment is in time for that?
We do not, but we can find out.
I mean, you wouldn't be a member of the committee, you would just be responsible for paying attention to them, right? Watching some meetings.
Yeah.
I don't think they have that many meetings.
Sure, certainly keep me at the head of the list if you're interested. If it turns out that there's a very onerous obligation, then I may be coming back and we can beg, borrow, and steal some other time. But I'm happy to be considered the point for Sustainable Westborough.
Okay, I will reach out to Peter Dunbeck, who I have as the current chair. I'm assuming
he
he
is.
still is.
Yeah.
And see what their time commitments have been with respect to meetings, et cetera, and then get back to you, Andrew.
Sure, and if it's easier for me to just follow up, I'm happy to do that as well. I'll leave it to whatever you think is appropriate. Figuring out I can run with this up front, but I don't want to arrest any relationships or control from you have.
No, go right ahead. Feel free. I was just going to do you the courtesy of doing that, but yes, feel free to reach out.
Could you send an email to both of us, just
Yes.
so that I have the name and I get, consider it an introduction, I can run with that?
Sure, I can do that.
Gratefully appreciated.
Yep. Okay. So when it comes to liaison assignments, and I'm saying this for the two new members, but also as a reminder for everybody else, the purpose of liaison is to be the eyes and ears of the advisory committee, the advisory finance committee. And because obviously we can't all be at every one of those meetings. And to bring back information of a relevant nature to this committee to use to inform our deliberations, whether it's about subject matter that is directly related to the liaison assignment or that is becoming a part of a larger picture. So there's danger always of a certain amount of advocacy. We have to maintain an objective perspective because our responsibility is to the taxpayers and the town meeting. And I think that we have to keep that in mind. There's as in many situations, there's a fine line which we have to be careful about not crossing. Okay? So, again, I think most of the liaison assignments are covered right now. Those that aren't, like the Cultural Council or the Historical Commission, we can cover, and weights and measures. We can cover as necessary. As we know that something is coming up, we can take care of that, okay, on an ad hoc basis.
Yeah, and Youth and Family Services is something that they usually have articles, so that might be something that, as we move forward, we might need.
That's Z, Zephyr's.
That's not on this list anymore.
Yeah, it's on
Is it?
this one.
Ah, okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, Zephyr, you have Youth and Family Services and Council on Aging.
Oh,
Were you were aware of that? Yes, of course you were.
Write it
I know
down. You're gonna make a list and email
Yeah.
to us? Okay.
Again, if we need to make adjustments, we'll make adjustments, okay? This is, we're not
Yeah,
gonna,
that wasn't on my list either, so. it'd
we're
be
not
good
gonna
to get-
slam down the
That's great.
gavel and say, done, forever, okay?
Sure.
So, all right, fair enough.
Hey, Mike, can I interrupt again for a second?
Please, John.
All this discussion about liaisons reminded me while I was sitting here at my computer that back when I was chairman, back in 2012 or so, I had written up my description at the time of what a liaison was. And I know it's evolved over time, and I'm not saying anyone has to agree with it, but I'm going to send a copy of that document to you and Walter, and you can look it over. And if you think it's useful to update and use for now, just because there's so many new people, just to say, what this is more what liaisons used to do, and you can edit it as you want. But I'd actually taken the time when liaisons first started back then to describe what I thought the role was. So I'll send that to you and Walter, and you can do with it what you see fit. Okay?
Appreciate it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
That'll be helpful,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
always good.
Any other issues that we as a committee should be looking at tonight? Okay.
When's our next meeting, I guess? August
Next meeting
15th,
is,
according to this.
August 15th. And again, all of our meetings, just as a reminder, unless there are other circumstances that change this process, all of our meetings going forward will be hybrid, okay? Because we still have a couple of our members who have some concerns about the health circumstances, okay? All right. Next item on the agenda is a motion to adjourn. May I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? We'll go to a vote. Andrew?
Bradley, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes?
Siddiqui, yes.
Moretti, yes. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Westborough TV.